Hey friends, welcome back to my craft room. This is Lauren, and today is the 25th of the month, and I'm going to be doing some Christmas crafting today. I'm using this All Is Calm BetterPress plate that was gifted to me from Spellbinders, and I'm going to make some quick and easy Christmas cards and then stepping them up just a little bit in case you like adding more to your BetterPress plate cards. I did a video earlier this month using some scrap backgrounds that I've been hoarding and just using those to do some impressions, some letterpress with the BetterPress system. And I did get some questions on what I use and how I made my background. So I thought I would just create some new backgrounds, for me to hoard as well. But I wanted to show you just how easy making some ink splattery looking backgrounds can be. I'm going to be using Distress Oxides for my first layer of inks on these background pieces. I'm using mixed media cardstock, and I'm going to start with more of a green colored background. So using Salvaged Patina Distress Oxide, I just squished the ink right onto my glass board, and I sprayed it with my my distress sprayer, which is now apparently called Disprayer. And I'm picking up that ink with my mixed media cardstock, and then I'm going to be using my heat gun. I have two settings, so I'm using the lower setting to dry my paper. Next, I'm coming in with my second color, and this is Pine Needles Distress Oxide, but instead of picking up the ink directly with my paper, I'm going to use this piece of acetate. This is actually a scrapbook.com A2 size, I believe. It's a smaller size of acetate sheets. They have an 8.5 by 11 and then I believe A2 in size, but now that I'm looking at it, I think it's bigger. I think it's 5 by 6. But I'm using that and kind of stamping my ink onto the background because I wanted it to have a more random feel. I didn't want it to completely fill the background like it did the first time when I added the ink. And once I'm happy with how it turned out, I'm just going to clean up my glass board as well as my acetate and then dry it again with my dryer on the lower setting. Once that's dry, I'm going to bring that lighter color back in, and I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the darker color. I'm adding water for my sprayer and then stamping that lighter color on. Now it won't be as prominent on top of the dark color, but it just kind of creates a multi-colored look. So I get a little bit more of that lighter tealishy green color, the Salvage Patina, on top of my pine needles. And once I'm happy with that, again, I'm going to clean up my area, clean off my piece of acetate, and then I will bring in the dryer. Now you could keep going with more colors. You could even do more with the darker color, more with the lighter color, but I just wanted to do two colors and a simple layer. I'm going to bring in my Distress Ink cube of pine needles, and I'm going to use this for splattering. So I went ahead and just squished that ink again right onto my glass board, and I'm going to grab a small paintbrush and just flick that color right onto that same piece of cardstock. And I'm trying to show you without editing too much out everything that I'm doing for this background so you can see all of the steps and how I put it all together. And once I'm done with my splattering, I'm going to grab a Distress Mica spray. This is from the Holiday Set 4 collection, and I'm spraying it with the nozzle, so just using it as the product is intended. And then I also opened it up and used the straw to have a more controlled splatter on that background. And I'll go ahead and set that aside to dry, and we're going to start on the next background, which is going to have more of a blue look, and I'm going to go a little bit quicker through this background as you've seen the whole process. So I'm starting with my lighter color, which is Broken China, again splattering or squishing that ink onto my glass board, spraying my water, and then picking this up directly with my mixed media paper. I'm trying to move it around, and I'm not really going to get much of a design this method, but it does cover most of my background that way. And now I have Uncharted Mariner as my darker color, and I'm stamping on my ink splatter. And again, I'm doing this to get a more random look and design, but yet it's still kind of controlled because I am picking it up with my acetate and then stamping it down. And now you do need to be aware if you don't want any harsh lines where the edge of the acetate is. I get it a few times as I'm doing this technique, but I'm going to trim my background down and add more to it. So I'm not really too worried about having those kind of sharp lines of the edge of ink because of the acetate. I still had quite a bit of ink on my glass board, so I went ahead and just tried to pick it up directly onto my cardstock. And I dried it again with my heat gun, and I made another ink squish of broken china, sprayed it with water, and then using that acetate to pick it up. I'm going to bring in my Uncharted Mariner in Distress ink, just like I did with the green background, and I'm going to splatter on the ink for the background, and then I'll bring in another Distress Mica stain. This is from the Christmas Holiday Set 2. And just like the first background, I'm spraying it directly with the spray nozzle, and then I will have a more controlled splatter by using the straw and just kind of tapping it onto the background. So I'll go ahead and set that aside to dry as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my green background, and we're going to trim it now that it's dry. And I'm going to cut it down to A2 in size. So I'm going to trim it to 5.5 by 4.25. And I want to use the side that has a little bit more of that larger ink area in green. So just using my paper trimmer again to cut it down to size. I will trim it again a little later, but I want to have a larger area to do my BetterPress impression on, just in case I don't get it perfectly centered. I can trim off and make my sentiment look more centered when I'm done. So here's the BetterPress system. I'm going to add this All Is Calm BetterPress plate to the center of the A2 rectangle on the magnetic side. The sentiment is really quite large. It's very nice for making quick and easy Christmas cards. Like I said, I'm going to share, the look of how you could just do this right onto the background. You could just glue this right to a card front, very similar to the video I did earlier this month, which I will link right here in the top right hand corner, so you can open it in a new tab and watch it after if you didn't see that video. But I wanted to not just make the same video twice, so I'm going to step them up just a little bit with some die cuts and hot foil die cuts as well. I went ahead and starting with the blue background here, and I have my sentiment centered in that rectangle, and I'm using some of that yellow tape to attach my blue background to the center on the top plate, and using those lines with the A2, the guide on that plastic plate to make sure my paper is centered. And I only applied my yellow tape where I know it won't interfere with my impression. I've talked about how I've learned the hard way with that. And I'm using my Spellbinders P6 in collaboration with scrapbook.com. I love the black color to make that impression, and here it is in the blue, so pretty. And I did it again in the green. Now, using mixed media cardstock, it won't be as deep of an impression as if I were to use the cotton cardstock from Spellbinders. So this is more kind of like a stamp than a deep letterpress impression. So you could definitely use the cotton backgrounds instead of using mixed media cardstock if that is your preference. For the green card, I was going to do some die cutting with the Stocking Full of Joy, which is the large die of the month, I believe from July. You can get this now, even though it was a monthly club kit. It is available to purchase at Spellbinders. And I already had these two little leaves put together, so I was very excited to just use those on the card. And then I'm going to be using the hot foil and die set Glimmering Snowflakes from the Bibi Snowflakes collection. I will hot foil those in silver and use the coordinating die to cut those out for the blue card. But let's get into making our first card. I'm using a red pattern paper from the Noel A2 pattern cardstock paper pad from scrapbook.com. And I actually did a pretty darn good job at centering my sentiment. So I trimmed off a 1/4 inch off each side. So there is a nice 1/4 inch border to see the red cardstock. And I liked those little leaf designs with the red berries, but I just felt like they looked kind of plain. So I grabbed the tiny little bow die from the Stocking Full of Joy large die set, and I cut it out twice from the back side of my pattern paper, which is this kind of dark berry colored red. And I just die cut it right out of the center of the pattern paper because I knew it was going to be covered with my BetterPress impression on that green ink background. So it was no big deal. I could use that to just cut out those small little dies and it would be covered no problem when I put the card together. Now I'm going to glue the green background to my red pattern paper, just adhered it right to the center. Again, totally covered those die cut holes. And now I'm adding liquid glue to the back side of my little leafy sprig here. But I did add some foam adhesive to 2 of the leaves, so that way there'd be a little bit of dimension. If you don't want any dimension on this card, you could totally skip that part and it would be pretty flat and you could mail it without any additional postage. I'm gonna glue my little bows together and onto the little sprig here in the top left. And I'm going to repeat that same process for the other one, but on the bottom right. I do end up trying to curve a little branch in a little more on both of them, so that way it stays more on the card, and I just trim off the excess with my large scissors anywhere where it will exceed past that A2 size, so it will fit on my card front just fine. So just trimming those off, and that will finish off the first card. I will add a little bit of pops of glitter in when I'm all done, but let's move on to the second card. So for the blue background, again, I trimmed it down so there would be a 1/4 inch border on all 4 sides. And I really like this pink striped kind of candy cane stripe background. And this is from the Mary A2 pattern cardstock paper pad from scrapbook.com. And I have my snowflakes foiled and die cut. So I went ahead and glued my blue background to the pink stripe background, and you could just leave it just like that. But again, I wanted to kind of step them up a little bit. So I'm going to use a mix of liquid adhesive and foam adhesive to attach these snowflakes just around the border. I'm making it kind of sporadic, bunching a few together just to create, a unique background. And again, going back and forth between liquid adhesive and foam adhesive while I'm layering them together, so it just has a fun, unique look with the snowflakes. And just like I did with the green leaves on the first card, I'm using my large scissors to trim off any of those snowflakes that extend past that A2 size so it will fit on an A2 card and envelope. Now for some final touches, I'm grabbing pops of color. These are both going to be glitter. The red one is ruby, and I covered all of the berries on the first card. And the second one is silver, and I just added a little bit to the center of all of the snowflakes. So I hope this answers the questions that I had some viewers ask about how I made my inky backgrounds and how you can make quick and easy letterpress Christmas cards, but also ways to kind of step them up just a bit if you want a little bit more on those Christmas cards. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!